Hello, welcome everyone to a Content Academy presentation of the content you want in the time you have. And this is a presentation that I've done for a long time. It started off as the blog you want in the time you have, which as you all know, those of you who know me, I'm a big fan of blogging. I still am a big blogger, big fan today, but I feel that the term blogging has evolved and I want to evolve with it. I feel that today we create content that could be used on multiple platforms. I'm creating lots of video content for YouTube, and I consider that blogging, but it's not just you blogging content, written content, it's video content. I'm creating content for social networks. That's content. I'm creating content for podcasts. That's content. And all this content is how we sort of create a publishing system for the web, and I consider that blogging. So this presentation has evolved a little bit over the years, but I still think it's one of my favorites and one of my best. I'm really excited to share it with you today. Great. A little bit of backstory into me. I started blogging back in 2008. I had a country music blog called Country Music Chicago, and it was an excellent opportunity for me to sort of meet some of the biggest names in the business. If you don't know country music, this was the band Rascal Flatts when they played at Wrigley Field in Chicago back in 2009, 2010 ish. And it was a really great opportunity to sort of get into the business, create a lot of content, and build a community around a niche topic. It was enjoyable. I had a lot of fun doing it, but the problem I had was the reason why I don't do it today is there's a couple of reasons. One, life changes and I got married and this kind of stuff. But two, I wasn't really able to turn it into a full-time job or into a sustainable business that was going to make enough money. And I was really sort of spending more money on I was spending more money to keep it alive than what I was to actually turn it into a business. I started to offer the things that I learned from blogging and creating content and building this business. I learned how to use WordPress. I learned how to do search engine optimization. I learned how to do photography. Sort of the skills and techniques that I learned from doing Country Music Chicago, I realized I could bundle that up and sort of offer it as services or as freelance services. So a few years later, 2010, 2011, I launched my consulting business called Front End Social, where I provide social media, digital marketing, and WordPress development services. And I realized it was much easier. It was much easier for me to do this and sell it because people wanted it, right? People needed my help. They wanted my creativity. And it was much easier for me to sell the service versus trying to sell subscriptions or sell digital products on Country Music Chicago, because at the time my product wasn't necessarily in line with with what my customers wanted. Lo and behold, I realized that although I love freelancing and I love helping clients, I also love teaching how to do it. So in about 2015, I started really getting into the teaching business with Content Academy and offering my services that I learned from my blog. So my blogging was maybe a failure in terms of making money, but it was an opportunity to learn how to do a lot of different skills and translate those skills into making money online. And I'm going to sort of give you a little bit of a primer today on how to create content today, but also how to leverage the web as a platform to sell your products and services. So that's really what this is all about today. And a few years ago, I started a podcast called The Blog You Want and the Time You Have. It still exists. I still post content to it today. In fact, I have an interview scheduled for next week. But the blog you want and the time you have is a combination of how to create content and how to leverage your time to do it smart and wisely. So you can save time, find easy ways of doing it, and have a great time in the end and making the most out of what you're doing. Before we get any deeper into the presentation, I want to ask a question. How much time do you really have? And this is a metaphorical question that I'm sharing with you today. And it's not meant to be sad. It's not meant to really dig too deep into well, it is meant to go a little deep. It really is something that you need to figure out, and you need to decide really what are you trying to do here with your projects. For me, I had an opportunity to meet a really, really creative guy and an entrepreneur. His name was Chris Huff. And Chris was an engineer and I'm a marketing guy. So we kind of were a nice fit because he had a lot of ideas and I had a lot of crazy ways to get them marketed and out into the public. Chris and I started working on a project together that we thought was going to be the next big thing. And we were going to go on Shark Tank and do all this and do all that. And it was going to be a big deal. But the problem is that Chris got diagnosed with cancer and unfortunately Chris passed away. So it made me realize at that time that life is short. I mean, really, I have to focus on what I want to do and when I want to do it. I also lost a few other important people in my life, like my father and one of the professors I was fond of in college. So it really made me realize that if I'm going to do something, I need to invest my best self into doing what I want to do. Now, of course, we all have lots of endeavors. We have jobs, we have responsibilities, we have spouses, we have children. We have lots of different things that sort of vie for our time. So what it made me realize is that the spare time that I have is important. And that little bit of spare time that I have, it needs to be focused on doing the most impactful actions that are going to get me where I want to go personally and professionally. And that's why when I say the time you have, I mean, okay, if you really think about it, you only have a couple hours a day that you can probably focus on what you want to do. If you think about all the other responsibilities that you have as a employee, as a spouse, as a partner, as a friend, or as a someone maybe who's part of a church or some other type of organization. So you really have to decide where you're going to spend your time and where you're going to invest, keyword invest your time into your most high impact tasks. And I'm going to bundle it up into this particular presentation. Here's a picture of my friend Chris. He's a good friend of mine, and may he rest in peace. But ultimately, I hope that this was inspiring to me, and I hope that it was inspiring to you. Now, one thing I realized is that you really need to make space in your life to make creativity happen. Creativity is a really special topic to me. It's something that I just completed an entire weekend summit called the Creative Year Ever. I know some of you were there. Joan, you were there. Thank you. It was the Creative Year Ever Summit. It was a 2-day event that we used to sort of leverage and maximize sort of how we're going to design our 2021. But ultimately, making space for your life to let creativity happen is important. And that could be anything from, you know, if you're a writer, maybe you want to spend time writing a little bit more. If you are a designer, you want to design a little bit more. Maybe maybe you're not a professional designer, but you wanted to get into design. You have to, or art. If you have to really work your creativity muscles, you have to spend time in your life to make that happen. You have to sort of practice it like you're exercising or doing something where you do a little bit every single day. And lo and behold, a couple years ago, I came across a really fantastic book called The Miracle Morning for Writers. And if you're blogging or creating content, most likely you're going to be writing at some level. Writing is typically the backbone of content creation. It could be script writing, it could be blog post writing, it could be writing social media posts, it could be at some level you're going to be writing it somehow. And there's ways around it. You could use dictation, you could just outline. So maybe you don't have to write a book, but ultimately you do have to do a lot of writing at some level if you're going to get into creating content. I don't care if it's video content, audio content, or written content. You're going to have to write at some point. And I think that the concept of the Miracle Morning, which is a systematic program designed by a gentleman named Hal Elrod, that basically, if you get up in the morning at your desired time, 5, 6, 7 a.m., whatever time is earlier than you normally would wake up, you really create sort of a special space for you and your life for doing what you want to do. And particularly with this person, or with this book, it's the Miracle Morning for Writers. So getting up and writing and hammering out your best content as soon as you can and as early as you can. And another book recommendation I have is called Eat That Frog, where it says you have to do your most difficult task, or the task that you most sort of don't want to do. You have to do that first thing in the morning. And that's sort of the same concept. You got to get up and you got to write. You got to get up and do whatever you're going to do to be creative and create content. So I really highly recommend this book, The Miracle Morning for Writers. It really allowed me to understand that I need to create a special space in my day for creating content and getting it done. And ultimately, that's how I wrote my first book. Because I got up in the morning before I left for work. I wrote for about 30 or 40 minutes every day, maybe an hour, depending on the type of how quickly I had to get to work. And that's how I got it done. If I didn't do that, I probably would have never gotten to actually finishing the book, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So the other question that I want to propose to you is, if you're going to create content today, or you're going to do some type of a sort of visibility or publicity campaign online for yourself, what is the blog do you want today? What's the blog you want in 2021? What's the content you want in 2021? And that's a really good question, because at the end of the day, a lot of people will tell you that blogging is free or easy or fun. The truth is, some people will say it's as simple as just taking a photo and turning it into a meme, right? There you go. That's it. It's that easy. But the truth is, creating a blog seems to be simple. It seems to be something that's easy to do. It seems to be something that's a no cost or free opportunity. But the truth is, building a blog is a little bit bigger iceberg than you think. There's a lot that goes into it. And I want to try to give you some clarity into what is the best potential way for you to go to make that happen. Because let's face it, in order to create a blog, it's writing. You have to write a little bit. If you're going to do a written blog, or you're going to do a podcast, like a scripted audio podcast, there's writing. Even if you're doing an interview podcast, you're going to have to write emails to ask people to be on your podcast. Like there's a lot of work that goes into creating content. There's editing, if it's editing your written work or editing your video content or editing your audio content, there's editing involved. And then of course there's optimizing, there's promoting. Like, and these are all the different things that go into optimization. Like you have to gather images, you have to edit your videos, you have to promote your videos, you have to like manage your website, you have to optimize your website. There's just a million different things that goes into creating content online, especially when you are a one person shop or a one man shop. There's a lot of responsibilities that go onto you that may have to make sure it happens. And that's why I try to bring a little bit of clarity into what is the ideal sort of marketing campaign for you to maximize your website or your blog today. And this is a little bit about my book, but basically I outlined that there is what I call the DAC model or the DAC or the digital acquisition cycle model. And this model is a 5-quadrant system that helps you identify where and how you're going to build your visibility online. Most importantly, in the center of this model, in the yellow area, right in the dead center, is your website or your blog. This is the most important or critical aspect of your content creation efforts. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where someone who doesn't know you exist or someone who is not in your database becomes from unknown to known. This is where they go from being somebody out there to being a subscriber to your blog or being a follower of your social media or being a follower of you. So your website and your blog is the most critical aspect of this entire digital acquisition cycle system. But most importantly, we have to do basically 4 main quadrants to get people to and keep people engaged around our content and around our system. So let's walk around the system here. If you think of awareness in the upper left, awareness is where everything begins. This is where people fall into your funnel, if you will. If you're familiar with a sales funnel, this is where people fall into your funnel. We have to do things, and when I mean things like marketing and advertising activities, that generates awareness that we exist. If people don't know we exist, then therefore they're never going to know to come to our website or our blog or our content. So we have to do things that generate awareness. And that could be simply crafting a blog post that is found through search. Maybe you have a blog or you write a blog post about 10 things that you can do, or a how-to blog post, like how to craft a blog or how to build a blog or how to design a blog on the Divi theme. Sorry, Joan, that's an example there, but how to craft a blog on the Divi theme could be maybe how someone finds you in a blog search or in an SEO search term. They find your blog through search. That's an awareness phase. Once they find you through search, they're on your website and they like your content because it provides them some value. If I read a post about how to set up a blog on the Divi theme, thank you, Joan, I will think, oh, hey, Joan knows what she's talking about. Therefore, I should maybe subscribe, right? And that brings me from the consideration phase directly to the subscribe phase, where this is where Joan benefits because Joan is capturing my email address that she can use to then retain me, right? So she can send me a newsletter providing me with more value. If she knows that I want to set up a blog on my site, then she probably has an idea of some of the other topics and articles that I may find of interest. How to market my blog, or how to build an e-commerce site around my blog, or how to create content, right? So now Joan has information that she can use to send a newsletter to me with, to provide me, the reader, with more value and excite me every single time she sends me new content, because she's giving me the information that I want in order to achieve my goals. Therefore, I find value in that, and then I am grateful and thankful for her for doing that. And finally, because I find this information so valuable, I get to a point where I'm comfortable with Joan that I decide that I'm going to share her content to my LinkedIn profile. And what happens after I share my content to her content to my LinkedIn profile? At that point, people are becoming advocates. And when they become advocates, that's driving more people back into awareness, bringing more people into my funnel and bringing them around my loop, my infinite loop here, right? So the idea is that we can use content to excite people so they essentially start to refer their friends and family to our system. Now, this is great. The problem is just with one post, this is not enough, right? There are many ways to sort of get this going. You can start with just blog search content, like blog content. You can start with just search content, but it can take a while. It can take 6 to 12 to 24 months to get going. My suggestion is to blow this out a little bit, right? So there are basically 5 quadrants of this system. And I want to take a look at everything you could do to build awareness for your site. Now, here's a comprehensive list. I mean, basically, you could do publicity campaigns, you could do radio, TV, print ads, word of mouth, affiliate marketing, sponsorship collaborations, influencer endorsements, social media display ads, content marketing, and direct mail. These are kind of every type of PR or marketing advertising things you could do to build awareness for your business or for your blog. But ultimately, not everyone makes sense. Obviously, running radio and TV and print ads is not going to be a good fit if you're just building a blog and you don't have a huge budget to spend on that type of awareness building activity. But that doesn't mean that social media display ads or creating some Facebook ads or some Instagram ads or Pinterest ads, which is a low cost, low entry level to get into creating content, could be a way to sort of start to build awareness for your blog or for your content, right? So if you spend a little bit of money to get people on the awareness side, you spend a little bit of time and money getting people to learn that you exist, then the more people you get in, the more likely they're going to go to the retention side where they can start to advocate for you, right? Remember in the last slide I talked about how advocacy, we want them to share our content to their social media so they can start to send their friends and family into our funnels. That's where we want to go. So if you spend a little bit of money here, and time is money too. You could spend time optimizing, you could spend time doing Twitter, promoting your content on Twitter, promoting your content on Reddit, these different platforms. So when people see it, they come to your website, they convert, right? They make a conversion into hopefully a purchase, or they can convert into a subscriber, and then they work their way around to eventually advocate people back to your website to bring more people into the awareness aspect of your funnel. Now, here's a key word here that I didn't have in the last example. The last example, this said subscribe, but in this example, this says purchase. So ideally, if you can get someone to purchase a product, a course, a book, something that has some money to it, you can then say that if you spent, let's just say you spend $2 to acquire somebody through social display ads, but they purchase a $10 book, you could use the profit to then reinvest in your advertising to build a sustainable ecosystem around creating content. So in my opinion, you really want to have some type of purchase or product that's associated with your blog or your content. Therefore, when you create content, you're making money. You can then take the money that you're making to reinvest in your advertising and marketing. This is where a lot of bloggers and a lot of content creators, I don't think, quite understand this process. And this is where I struggled with Country Music Chicago. I didn't quite have that purchase product or that offering in place that made sense for people to want to give me money to make a sustainable ecosystem around this blog. And that's really where I challenge you to figure out, okay, if you're going to create a blog or you're going to create a website or you're going to create content for YouTube or Instagram, then what are you really selling? What's your product? What are you offering to people that they're going to be willing to pay for? And that's really where I really want you to take away today in terms of what, if we're going to build a blog, what is your product and how are you going to sell that? And then ultimately, once you have that offer, once you have that product, what is the content you're going to create to help promote that offer? And I think that's a key to creating a sustainable ecosystem around posting and creating content. A really good example. Now, this is a lot. There's a lot of things that happen here, right? There's a lot of sort of, there's a lot of things that you can do. And if one of these isn't right, let's just say your website's not completely optimized, then you could lose people. You could literally be spending money here and losing people on your website because your website's not fine-tuned. Or worse, you spend a lot of time on the awareness consideration side, but you spend no time on the advocacy retention side. And this happens a lot. This is really where sometimes this is where I have a hard time managing this, because you have to do a lot of you have to create a lot of content on the blue side to reach new people. The cold side, you have to reach new people, but then we sometimes run out of steam, or we just run out of time to retain people. Like, we don't send newsletters, we don't create more content, we don't do stuff to sort of keep people engaged. And this is where I like to show this kind of funny clip. One of my favorite movies, it's The Blues Brothers. It was shot in Chicago. For those of you who know, I'm a big Chicagoan here. So it's kind of like this. If you don't keep your content, I don't know if you can hear it because of the video stream, but you are the lead car, right? That's you. That's your blog. And these are your followers. And Jake, he says, hey, Elwood says, hey, I got to pull over. He makes a pivot. Let's just say you make a pivot with your site, a pivot with your blog. Sometimes your followers don't quite get it, and they end up not following you to your final destination, right? So you have to be very careful that once you sort of get this racetrack going, once you get the system going, your followers are sort of following you. You have to make sure that you keep them engaged and you keep them ready to go to the next level with you, because they're not always going to follow you everywhere you go. That's why making sure this system, this digital acquisition cycle is completely fine-tuned and that you know the entire system. That's why I recommend spending time learning about each one of these individual tactics, because the more you know, the more you'll be able to fine-tune this funnel, the more you'll be able to tell someone else how to do it with you. Because at the end of the day, we're in a system scaling our content. We need a whole team of people to create content in a way that's going to be doable. You know, you can go out there, and if you find the right niche and the right opportunity, you can create enough content to build your system. But this is 2021. There's a lot more people doing this. There's a lot more people creating content. And I think the sites that are really killing it today, the ones that are doing very well, are the ones that have a whole team of writers writing. In order to have writers writing, you're going to have to pay them somehow. So in some ways, you have to have some type of product in place where you're making money so you can pay them and you can seed the system and scale your blog, or scale your content endeavor into a larger team of people who can help you create it and help you get it done faster and better. So that's my sort of, what is the content you want today? The content you want is, you want a team of people helping you create content, because there's a lot of things that have to happen correctly. And luckily we're here to help you kind of figure that out and make the best decisions. So here are some tips for making time to get it to happen, right? One of the biggest things I can tell you right now is, if you plan to be a one person shop, which I totally respect, that's a lot of ways that's me. If you plan to be a one person shop, you're going to have to figure out some tools and some tips for making it happen. Number one, I really recommend reviewing your day-to-day to-do list activities. There's a really popular productivity method called the Eisenhower matrix. It was actually designed by President Eisenhower, or Supreme Leader of the Allied Forces, Dwight D. Eisenhower. And he basically says you have four quadrants that your tasks go into, your daily tasks. Let's say you have 10 things you have to do today. You can sort them into basically four quadrants. The things you have to do now because they are urgent and important, the things that you can do later because they're not urgent, but they're not important, right? You're not going to lose your job. You're not going to send troops into the wrong battle because they're not important if you don't do it right this second. There's a third quadrant, which is called delegate and outsource, where this is stuff that, like, it's not urgent. It's urgent, but it's not important to you, meaning that someone else could do it. Like, for example, I could record a video, but I don't have to do the editing. I could make someone else could do that. Like, I can outsource the editing of my video content. Or there are things that I don't need to do. I should just eliminate. They're not urgent. They're not important. Then maybe we don't even need to do them. And that could be watching TV, or that could be doing something that doesn't require any. I don't have to do that. I say you have to spend some time resting and relaxing, because that's an important part of creating a sustainable ecosystem as a creator. But at the same time, I'm sure there are things on your schedule that you could also just eliminate. But I want to take a time to really look at P1 and P2. P1 is do now. It's urgent and important. These are the tasks that ultimately you have to do, because if you don't, there's going to be major consequences. That if you have a job, if you don't do your tasks at your job, you'll probably get fired, right? So these are your P1 tasks. They're urgent and important. But most of us, we set out to create content. We set out to do a blog, and most of our tasks fall into the important but not urgent category. And that is why they never happen, right? They're urgent to us. It's something that you want to do, but if the universe doesn't need them, doesn't know that it exists, they're not going to be on you to do it. And that's one thing that I really, really encourage you to do, is sit down and think about what would really make you want to do your site. Because if it's urgent and important to you, it's going to get done. If it sits in this, it's not urgent, but it's important, this is something that may never ever happen if you don't spend intentional time doing it. And that's why I recommend getting up in the morning, either starting a morning routine, having an evening routine, doing your blog over your lunch hour, whatever you can do in order to make it important and make it a habit that you do every single day. If you turn it into a habit, you can make it happen, and it's something that will become a reality. writing my book is a great example. I wanted to finish a book. I knew the first book I started writing was like 3 or 4 years ago, but it just never happened because it was always important to me, but it was never urgent until I took the intentional time every morning to get up and get it done and made it important and made it urgent. Then that's when I was able to get it done. And I highly recommend checking out a book called The 7 Habits for Highly Effective People by Dr. Stephen Covey. If this is an oldie but goodie, it's been around for a long time, but if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. It's a highly valuable book to read, and this is where I got the 4 quadrants from. So if you want to read more about the Eisenhower Matrix, check out this book. I'll leave a link in the chat here for you to check it out. And also, it's available at almost any public library too. It's a pretty popular book. So if you don't want to purchase it on Amazon, you can go to almost any public library and check it out. But in terms of writing or creating a blog, I really recommend trying to build their habits or build a rhythm of spending 30 minutes every day creating a little bit of content. And that could be 30 minutes to write an outline. That could be 30 minutes to write a post. That could be 30 minutes to do some editing, but spend 30 minutes each day to work on your outline to get it done. And ultimately, you can spend more if you get into the habit of you sit down for 30 minutes, but you end up writing for 50 minutes, great. That's fine. Keep going with it. But if you just sit down and you're only able to sit down and barely do 30 minutes because it's really difficult and it's really hard, at least you spent 30 minutes towards your important tasks, something that is important to you, but not urgent to the world, and something that will help you get to your end game, publishing great content, whether that's a book, a post, or some other piece of content like a video or something like that. So sit down and try to plan 30 minutes every single day, 7 days a week towards creating your content. And you'll be surprised how much content you'll actually get done when you sit down and make this habit and make it happen for 30, 60, 90 days. The next advice I have for you is to create a content deck. And a content deck is something that I use whenever I have an idea for a blog post or a piece of content or a new book or something like that. I write it down in my content deck. And basically, I use a program called Trello. Trello is a productivity management tool. And in Trello, I have several boards, many boards. But basically, I have 3 boards that I typically use every single day. I have my visualization board, which is a personal board. This is a board that I keep all my this is where I keep where I'm visualizing myself in the future. I have my project board, which is a board that I use all my tasks and everything I need to do in my life. This is my P1s and my P2s. Like, this is where things that I've got to get done. What I call tickets, like a client or a employer needs something done, I make a to-do in my project board. But my content deck is the special one. My content deck, and I have an example here for you. My content deck is where I put new ideas and where I manage my blog content or my video content or my podcast content. So basically, there are lists and cards. Okay. First thing I start off with this is like my taxonomy. One thing that as you get into blogging, you want to write about a lot of things, but I really recommend sitting down and deciding, like, where is your authority? What types of content are actually best for you to write about? And this is sort of what I think of WordPress, content strategy, and digital marketing are my main categories that I should be writing about. Podcasting is also kind of a big one for me. There are other little areas too, like prototyping, e-commerce, productivity, stuff like that, where they are good for me to write about, but they're not my main core authority things. And this changes. This is actually maybe a little bit out of date over the years, but this is what I really try to focus on are these topics right now. And I keep this in here just as sort of a reminder that this is what I'm writing about, because sometimes I come up with ideas that aren't in my authority gram, and I need to decide if they're really that important. If it's not within my authority gram, then I probably don't need to write about it. So I should just delete those or delegate those. Now, the next column I have is scheduled for production. These are blog posts or titles of content that I need to actually work on right now. This column only has 1 or 2 things in it because I should only be working on 1 or 2 pieces of content at one time. Therefore, that's why there's only 1 or 2 in this column. This column is the ideas. Like if I go and I have an idea for a blog post while I'm out driving around or while I'm in the shower or whatever, this is where I throw that idea in here, because that way these are the ones I'm working on next. This column indicates the products that I have, right? So these are basically like the sites that these posts are associated with. For example, I have the Blog You Want podcast. This article topic, affiliate marketing, would be for this platform, if you will, or this product. And then when they're done, I post them to this is the done here. They have the graphics and everything, so I can go in here later and I can easily go in here and share this to my Twitter, share this to my other social media accounts where I can promote my content. And I just kind of keep a little bit of a catalog for my finished posts. And this is a template that you can use. I can send the link. I'll put the link in the chat, but this is a template that you can easily just copy and use for yourself and Trello, and it's a template, and I even have little instructions for what each one of these lists means, and they're the ones that have the little squiggly lines at the top. So feel free to borrow this and use it and make it your own, to use it to create your own content deck for your content creation efforts. I have another episode that I can share with you, blogyouwant.com/16. This was a podcast episode I did on this content deck example. If you'd like a little bit more information on this, more than I covered today, oops, that's the same link. But if you want to go to blogyouwant.com/16, it will give you more information on this particular method that I shared with you on the ideal blogging plan. And it will give you a deeper dive into the content deck example I just showed you. So feel free to check that out. Now, another tip I have for you, if I go back to the presentation, is continuing to look at establishing a weekly planning routine. And this is something that I am a very huge advocate for. I think the Bible of productivity is Getting Things Done by David Allen, The Art of Stress-Free Productivity. And again, I'll throw this link into the chat here. But basically, this book is, in my opinion, the Bible of how to be a productive person in a sort of a mind era where we use our minds to create content and to create businesses. GTD recommends establishing a weekly review session. So on Sunday evenings, I like to sit down and plan out my week. This is where I plan out my 30-minute time chunks. This is where I plan out the ideas that I have. He also recommends having an inbox on your desk where you put information. Let's say I have an idea, and quite literally, I have a Post-it note right here on my desk. This is my Post-it note. And whenever I have a new idea, I write it down in my Post-it note and I put it into my inbox, which is right here. You can't see it, but it's literally right here. Now, what I do is I put that idea in the inbox and I forget about it. I forget about it until Sunday evening when I sit down and I decide, what should I do with this idea? Is this idea something that I should do this week? Is this idea something that I should do in what he calls a someday maybe category? It's a good idea, but it's maybe not quite in line with what I need to do right now. Or is it something that I can delegate to someone else, right? Or have done some other time. So keep an inbox nearby, keep an inbox on your desk, and then use this weekly planning routine to plan out your week and to sort your ideas. So you can use them to decide what you want to do with them, if there's something you want to do right now or something you want to do later. And finally, your future, right? Really think about the future. Where do you want to be? Begin with the end in mind and decide, how are you going to apply these ideas to where you want to be? I have a few last pieces of advice here. Content creation is a muscle. And when you work it, it comes easier and better. I know for me, I can write a lot faster today than what I could 10 years ago, right? Because I've been writing a lot. And when you write more, you'll write faster. When you create more, you'll create faster. When you learn how to use Photoshop, you'll be able to do more stuff, be able to create more on your own. That's empowering you. You can either do more of it yourself, or you can learn how to easily delegate to someone else when you know how the program works. So content creation is a muscle, and it will come with practice and commitment. Just like this guy, if you work out every day, you'll have muscles like this guy, which I wish I had. But ultimately, you got to do a little bit every day. It's not going to happen in one day. It's going to take several months to a while to get it going. Another example that I have, it happens to be sports related again. I'm not a big sports guy, but I've got a lot of sports quotes in here. If you're not making mistakes, then you're not doing anything. It's positive that a doer makes mistakes. And that's by John Wooden, the legendary UCLA head men's basketball coach. If you're not making mistakes, you're probably not doing anything. So go out there and make some mistakes, and that will be a really great way to clarify what you're doing. That's one thing that happened with Country Music Chicago. It was a mistake that took several years, but I realized what to do once I made that big mistake, and that was not having a product in place to sell that people want. So go out there and figure out what type of products do people want, then create content and create a content marketing system around a product that people want to buy. That's my suggestion for most people who are looking to start a blog today. And then finally, figure out how to find some accountability. I mentioned in the beginning that I just recently had a virtual summit called creativeyourever.com. And in this virtual summit, we have a Facebook group. It's a free Facebook group, and you can join it. I'm going to post a link right here, and I'll put a link in the chat. It is a free Facebook group that you can join where people are looking for accountability partners. So if you're looking for someone to help you be accountable with your content creation, feel free to post in that group. Additionally, on creativeyourever.com, there is a free workbook that you can download. Here's an example of the workbook right here. It helps you sort of design your best year ever and helps you come up with plans that you can do to sort of decide what do you want to focus on this year. And it's a great workbook that I recommend sitting down with, especially in January. Today's the 30th, but especially this month, it's a good time to sit down and decide how do you want 2021 to shake out for you and what do you not want to do so you can focus on what you do want to do. And then also we have access to the Creative Year Ever Virtual Summit replays for just $9.99. You can watch over 19 different sessions that we talk about creativity and business tips and tricks that you can use to sort of take to the bank this year in 2021 to make this year your most creative year ever. I highly recommend checking that out. It was a really great weekend. I had a lot of fun doing it and learned a lot of cool new things. So be sure to check that out soon because Creative Year Ever is about to close, given that we are getting out of the beginning of the year. By March, it will be gone. So be sure to go there and check that out now while you still can. All right. Now, this is where we go into Q&A. So if you have any questions, start to get those ready. But ultimately, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on to this presentation today. A couple last things. Be sure to check out my book called The Digital Acquisition Cycle for Content Creators. It's available on Amazon.com and other fine book retailers. I recommend the blogyouwant.com/blogging challenge. It's a free challenge that I've set up where it gives you a sort of 7-day writing course, mini writing course you get every day by email. You can check it out here. It gives you some ideas for how to create some rhythms in creating content and getting into that 30-minute cycle every single day. Check this out. It's free. All you got to do is enter your email address on the site here. And then finally, be sure to like my Facebook page, if you will. I appreciate this. That's where I put all my upcoming events and other things that are going on in our world. And finally, I want to give a shout out to Joan, who was on the call today with us today on the 8th, February 8th. We are doing a presentation on how to create a blog with the very popular and very awesome Divi theme. And let me pull it up here. The topic is how to incorporate and design a blog with Divi. And this is a workshop/discussion that we do for the Divi Chicago Meetup group. It is Monday, February 8th from 7 p.m. Central Time. And you can join us to learn how to set up a blog and incorporate it into your Divi-based website, which is a fantastic platform for building WordPress website, WordPress themes, and that kind of platform. So be sure to check that out. And that's all I got. So if you have any questions, feel free to pop on and say hello or use the chat feature. We're here for the next, 20 minutes or so. If not, that's it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining us today, and I really appreciate you coming. Please